Okay, hopefully I'm back. I'm gonna check my channel. All right, I believe I am back. I don't know what happened there. All looks good on my end, so whatever. We'll just see how this one goes. And if anybody experiences any video or audio and wants to let me know, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for the heads up on that earlier. Luckily, we just got started. We're just talking about laying in with this little drawing mixture of paint, these distant trees with a thin quality to that paint so that we get a little variation. Now, looking at like the marks, the way that these kind of branches are falling, thinking about like the way light and dark patterns across the piece. I think that that is, yeah, back. Okay, great. I think that that is, really what I'm focusing on right now. It's almost like a little shorthand um, drawing. Added white, but that's okay. Well, I went to go lighten that up a little bit, and I just grabbed the white paint without even like consciously realizing it. Now that's a no. We're just going to clean that brush off. I don't need the white paint. I wanted a lighter color. So interesting. Minute technology gets to me. I like forget everything I'm doing. But I'm going to keep this transparent a little bit longer. I want to build, especially these two kind of trees up in transparent way just to make sure that I'm getting the feeling of like airiness. I can always go thicker and darker over the top. And I like these little scribbly marks. There's a good chance that some of them are going to be very nice in the finished piece, I hope. We'll see what happens. Like I said, it's always kind of this interesting challenge to maintain the picture in a way that you can keep these unfinished things and they look good. But I often try for it and I sometimes succeed, at least in part. Spindly trees back here. And again, just really thin. I think already that has like getting a little more depth and activity. And I'll just keep this up with, let's keep that thin paint. Let that little orange poking through at the edge. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll go a little bit more blue just to hopefully. And I'm just like seeing this mark in the paint on the canvas that I think I might kind of utilize. I tried to make these faint brush strokes of possible trees for placement. You can kind of see it in the picture, at least right now, before I get into filling it in. Um, so the trees are kind of there and not there. I don't know. Trees are always something that I think, to make them feel like they're part of the landscape and part of the environment, such a challenge because they're so, I don't know, they're so specific. They have so many contours, details, and things that you really want to capture, but then they start to feel sort of separate and plunked on top. And I've been like trying to figure out ways to counteract that. I want to make this a little more angular and sharper over here. I don't particularly care all that much about whatever reference information there is for certain aspects of this. Like, I don't care what, actually happens with this contour, but I really like that color combination right there. And I like that edge. So I want to keep that. And if it's wrong, then it's wrong because I like it. So it's not wrong. But if it doesn't like look exactly like the thing, right? So all of that is in our control. We don't have to shy away from a reference because it's complex or be so specific and so true to the reference that we're afraid to like leave that behind too. So it's just this mix, but I often find myself getting, more drawn into what I'm seeing in a photograph. Like, oh, I have to get this right. It's just a habit that comes up. I think it's just kind of human nature. So I'm currently reminding myself and all of you now that it is okay to change things. But at the same time, the other side of that coin is that like I don't want it to be a matter of like I cannot work from that reference because I'm not capable of, you know, conveying that information or noticing that detail or etc. So, you know, food for thought. It's an interesting question to ponder, right? Like, how do you interpret a photograph? And is part of that based on your skill level and your limitations of time and materials, or is that all something that you're kind of putting like a meaning into what you're painting by making these changes, right? Because emphasizing things, I think, is a really powerful way to convey what it is about the piece, about the scene. That's typically a realistic scene. You want to emphasize things that you see. You want to make that a little bit more expressive. Funny that I'm saying this because this painting looks so much like the reference, but I often do work that's not maybe as true to the reference, and it's a little bit more open to interpretation, right? For that, it's funny, I really love working from life for that challenge of, not feeling like you have to match details. I think when we see this image in a two-dimensional reference and it's printed out right next to my painting, it's like really easy to be like, oh, look, my image should look just like that image. But when there's no image, just real life, it's just you have so much more freedom. So paint from life sometimes, because that's really, I think, easier in a lot of ways. You don't get bogged down by this whole imagery thing. So again, the consistency of the paint, I think, is working for me at this point, I hope. It's part of the plan to keep this very light and very, very thin, but not really drippy. So it's kind of on the drier side. And I can paint sky color right over this. I can go bopping around in between these little branches and marks, and I can paint lots of little darker bits, lighter bits. And I think that's such a nice way to build up a believable texture. And sometimes I'll just kind of work through, like, I'm just thinking of a little pathway from this way through. I know that might not make a lot of sense, but sometimes you just got to kind of back up and think about this almost like as an abstract painting and reinforce some of those directional qualities. So I see all this like blue, and I love that almost like triangle pointing this way, and then there's this zigzag this way. So I'm just trying to kind of emphasizing this like diagonal down here through the trees. It's hidden, but it's kind of the structure, you know, that's really what the viewer is experiencing more than trees. They're experiencing this like dark diagonal that leads the eye down, I hope, maybe. And I really want to pop some oranges into this. So I'm putting a lot of like the cerulean blue into the shadow side. I want to build some contrast and let that like warmth really come through when I get to that. All right, I'm still in transparent paint. This is really going on for a while. I think that's useful though. I always feel like the more you can do with it, the better. Allowing yourself that opportunity to, you know, put some layers on. Put really thick wet paint, very alla prima. Sometimes you can get beautiful results. And in fact, one thing I've been kind of thinking about, and I've never done this, but I've heard about this painting exercise, seen it discussed online, and I really need to do this. So tell me what you think of this. A painting in like a limited number of brush strokes, let's say 15, 10, something in that range, right? So you're painting maybe an apple or a pear. How would you do that in 10 brush strokes? Now, I don't know which instructors are kind of using this method or pioneering this, but I think it would be such a nice way to work, very opposite to what I'm doing, you know. I don't want to get too like noodly or anything, but at the same time, I'm going for layers and transparency. So these marks aren't, you know, over blending, or I hope. I'm trying to keep them pretty fresh, almost like handwriting. That's what I sort of think of when I do things like this, like these little squiggly movements with the brush, almost like you're signing something with a flourish. All right, and you know, maybe that's it. I'm not really finding like that many more places to work with this transparent color, but let's see if I can't bring that down a little. I love that, like that line that can just gradually kind of breathe out to the end there. There's some really nice colors that I like on the road quite a bit. I want to kind of amp those up. And time is of the essence, so we better finish this up post haste. Okay. It's opaque paint time. Let's do a little sky refresh. We've got our trees in with transparent paint. And now, some blues. So I always talk about like how in color mixing, we often think in terms of opposite colors. But, you know, that's probably the most important thing that I say over and over again. But one of the other important things I say over and over again about color is hold that color up. If you don't know what's wrong with the color, and you probably don't unless you've held it up, you should absolutely hold the color up. I'll hold it up to my painting to show you. I'm trying to match my painting or see what it looks like against my painting. That's much lighter than it currently needs to be. I'm going to go with a little, what's that? Ultramarine blue. But it's kind of got like a yellow pinkness to it, right? So there's like a quinacridone color that I like to add. I believe that's magenta. We also have permanent rose, which is so pretty, and that's very pink. So I'm going to mix up some nice kind of lighter pink color pretty. We've got the cobalt. Luckily, I didn't ruin that pink color with it. And what else? There's like a teal. So much color on this palette. Like, let me just swipe this off. Okay. I mean, it looks very pastel on the palette, if you can see that. I don't think there's too much glare. But yeah, it's probably going to be okay. Let's give it a go. Let's see what it looks like. And if we're going to dull it down, we're going to dull it down. And I bet we're going to dull it down. Ooh, that's pretty. Love that color. That one's really nice as is, but I need a bigger brush now that I've tested that. And we're going to take out our, I don't know, it's like a flat of about 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch or so. And a little bit of, see how much I'm scooping up onto the brush. Then I like to put the oil, a couple of drops out here. And I'm like really loading up this brush. So I really want to scoop up as much paint as I can. This will be the last mark on the surface in this area. So this is the finishing paint, right? Hi. All right, let's get that going. Here we go. All right. So I have lots of paint on this brush. I'm coming in perpendicular. I'm not going like this, or I'm sorry, I'm coming in parallel, not perpendicular. And I'm just going to lay that down much like you're putting butter on toast. Very smooth, right? All right. I like the color. It kind of fits in there. I don't know if you can see that much, but wow, what it does for the, I'll just move my palette. What it does for the surface is lovely. So I think that is an important one. This is a little bit more paint on the brush. We're just going to like clean this up before we finalize the trees with some thicker paint. Now we can't use all of the same color, so I'm going to mix together a little bit of this pink green mixture. And now those were complementary, and so they grade out very nicely. I'm dotting this kind of through this tree. So see, this is what I mean about like weaving the trees in. I want some marks underneath. I want some marks on top. The trees are, you know, really in the atmosphere that way. A little darker. I don't like to paint in such an expected way, you know, like all the marks going in one direction. I'm gonna break the pattern. I'm just doing the teeniest little bit of brush mixing. Don't sue me. Okay. Interesting, very pink, violet. Kind of nice. I like that counter angle with it. Maybe it's not entirely what I wanted, but it's all right. Here. A little more teal in the situation. All right. Now this paint consistency is a little bit drier. It's not like really, really oiled, you know, super fat paint that you're just gonna never be able to touch or paint over again. So I probably won't paint over it, but I could if I wanted to. So there's that. always options. Here's something for the other side of the cloud. Maybe that'll be a nice little transition to bring a little more light over here. I just want this cloud to feel like it's floating in like a dark sky. And I'm just like kind of brushing this on, and I want this to illuminate the darkness of the cloud and make that edge of light feel just a little bit more, if it makes sense. Let's get a little lighter through here too. Very like cool, crisp, violet kind of gray in there. Now I want like a little orangey color to balance that. But that violet gray, it's such a pretty color. But you can almost see the color more. So sometimes I'll be like, oh, this color is just amazing, but it is invisible. That is the thing that I think there. We need to make this color a little more visible by showing it with some contrast. All right. Ooh, that's glowy. Exciting. Get a little more light down here. There we go. Mm-hmm. You know what color I really feel like I want to grab is, I know I'm sticking my entire head right in the camera frame. But Indian yellow is, or India yellow as it is now called, which is a good change. We want to use that color because it is absolutely a stunning yellow that's just going to fly off the canvas when mixed with something for those sunlit trees. Now they're a little bit greenish. Oof. It's a zingy color for sure, if you can see that. It is a very intense yellow green. So let's make another version of it that is a little bit like orange. It also makes incredible oranges. Look at those colors together. They're just absolutely wild. I don't know if they're too wild. Add a little bit of white for transparency. If you get a color that is way too see-through for what you're doing, add just a little tiny drop of white, and you often will find that is exactly the amount it needed just to cover a surface or be wow. transparent. Okay, sorry, gotta focus, gotta focus. Here we go. We're doing the in the right spot. That's the big tree. That's this tree. Doesn't really matter, but you want to make sure compositionally I like where things are. Wow, that's a bright, strong color. Put it a few more places. We just don't have time to be, kind of taking our time and approaching this color slowly. This is time to really just kind of go for it. I'm going for a more spontaneous look now since it's 2:37 and I have to go at 3. So, and this painting, I think I'm going to finish this up. So, we're thinking positively, thinking positively. Again, thinking about like, can I just create a little line of this color that repeats? Maybe not directly repeats, but I think just using it in a few places for a little similar color that you can kind of tie in with that. Otherwise, it just sits there like looking kind of out of place, right? So a similar color, I would just adapt that. I'm going to go a little lighter, a little more pink maybe, and then I'll add that to this incredible green. And now we have this. We're going to put on these marks like pretty nice and thick, and it really gives a good context to the rest, I think. This is just me talking, but you know, and I realize it's my painting, but I think it makes those thinner, scratchier marks look a little bit more intentional, and they look like what I wanted them to be. They look more like trees. All right. All right, so we have our India yellow. Teal green. Let's just make sure that I don't want any lighter in the sky over here. I might just want a little bit lighter. Mix up a bit of nice light pink. I feel like the color here just needs to have like a little bit more warmth to it. Maybe a tiny bit of yellow too. So like I said earlier, you really can just paint kind of back into and over those thinner areas as I'm doing now. Mm-hmm. Going into the clouds, I feel like once you kind of finish one area and work back into it, often you'll find the other areas all of a sudden they look a little underdone, right? And you have to kind of circle around again. It's what really I feel most people, myself included, this is why we underestimate how long a painting is going to take. It's like you think one part is done, but you add something someplace, and then you have a little bit of balancing. I really do feel it is about coming to a place where everything kind of arrives at the end of the painting at a similar time. If you finish one area and then you're really, really pushing for everything else to look like that area, I think that becomes very time consuming in addition to looking a little static, stilted. I don't know what the word is, but a little stiff, right? Like we want a little more flow with that. Like that cloud, a little more dramatic on the lights. That was a bit of a scumbled color, right? We're just kind of adding a dry coat of paint that sort of picks up the weave of the canvas. That's scumbling. Now, if you're sort of thinking to yourself, the problem with guys that you've run into in the past is having that problem where you're mixing like a green unintentionally, having that pinky orange color and the blue color kind of meet at like a pink is a nice way to go. Got a little bit more intense reddish pink right in here. I think that would be kind of cool. Okay. That might do for now or forever. And now I want to kind of finish the rodent foreground really quickly. I don't think that's going to take that long. Am I possibly underestimating? It's possible. But I'm going to try. One thing I'm going to try is like a little palette knife just to get some paint on here. I love the texture that it makes, and maybe, yeah, I like that already. It's kind of fun. A little bit in here too. Great. Palette knife to the rescue. I mean, I just think it's so fun to paint with. And if you have a palette knife and you have not tried this yet, you must. You absolutely must. It's just too much fun. Plus, there's no cleanup at all. You just wipe off the palette knife and you're done. All right, I'm going to go darker on that lower right-hand foreground, but I think it looks a little more violet, purple, brown. Brown and purple are so often found together, I think, just beautiful mixture. It looks so good for areas like this, colors like this, that kind of darker, cooler, purpley gray shadow color. I gotta pick this up for 1 second just to get this bottom edge. Okay. Now, this is daring, but it occurred to me, so I'm going to try it. Okay, we're just going to try and incorporate one little bit of palette knife into the sky. There's something I want here. A little kind of patch of solid. I feel like a little smoother. Kind of like that. Okay, I'm going to connect it. I really like that color. I don't know. That was, I won't say it was luck, but it was luck that I didn't have to fix it and I got it on the first try. I could get it. That's not luck, but getting it on the first try, that might be a little bit of luck. Yeah, I wanted that side to like be a little lighter. It was talking to me and I wasn't really listening to it. Now it's really, I feel like that's better. Like the value, I think the sweep of the sky looks a little bit closer to like what I wanted. It's not like I don't know, it's not a 50-hour studio painting or anything. It's kind of a study. It's like a plein air painting. By the way, hello, if you haven't already, if you could please subscribe to this channel, as you'll note by my little sign below my painting. I'm trying to get to 1K because here I have now just recently learned one can live stream from their phone. And friends, I have some things to live stream from my phone. And what I'd like to do is plein air painting outdoors and take you with me. So I'm going to need 1,000 subscribers. Yeah, I've been on YouTube for a while now, but not very active until recently. And I really hope that I can continue to grow this channel and provide hours of painting instruction, support, and entertainment for you. Love your feedback. Anything that you'd like to see specifically, anything that, I should know, lay it on me. All right, let's paint some trees, some very dark, very definite marks, and then we're done. Okay. Now, when I say very dark, of course, I mean variations, because we cannot have the super dark trees in the foreground on the left absolutely the same color as the trees on the right. Now, what should the trees on the right be? How should they be different? They should be a little bit lighter, a little bit bluer, and a little bit grayer. Okay. Atmospheric perspective rules in effect. Now, I'm going to start with that and some oil. A little pile, kind of a color that has a little bit of movement to it. I just really need this to be pretty blue, gray, dark. Getting there. But also the consistency has to be kind of liquidy, has to go on like the mark, it has to look the right way, right quality. And some of that is consistency. Now this medium is 50% linseed oil and 50% terp. It's going to be a very blue tree. Or too blue. Let's make it more purple. There we go. I'm spinning the brush backwards through the paint, trying to get this nice little point show up. And again, starting where I feel confident. I'm not going to do any major damage right away. Needs to be more liquidy, so I'm just dipping my brush in just the tiniest bit of terp so that it mixes with my linseed oil, my paint. All right, and with that brush, like honestly, if I weren't painting this on camera, I might put my face directly next to the canvas and like really get in there. It probably wouldn't be a good idea. Try to stay back. You can see how I'm kind of holding the brush from the back. I'm doing like one of these. Okay. So this is the way I would recommend painting it. Move around. Don't make one mark that, like don't paint one tree, one whole, the same color and then move on and do it again. We don't want anything to be formulaic. We're going for nature. So I've thought a little bit about like the complementary colors and trying to lay in, you know, some purpley colors next to the oranges and some greenish blue colors. And I've put in the brightest of the highlight colors. So now I am really building up this surface, putting kind of final marks. With the point of the brush, I'm trying to put a little bit of a warmer color on the left side. I see that as picking up just a little bit more warmth. And I also feel like in terms of detail, not every area should be detailed. It is way cooler and more interesting, in my opinion, to like leave some areas that just have marks. And then if you hit like one thing with more information, more detail, more finish, all of those slightly unfinished marks have a whole new meaning. I'm really pushing the dark blue next to the orange here. I just want that to really pop and not look outlined. You know, I don't want it to look outlined. Also want to transition a little red into that shadow. And then we got to move on to the foreground trees. I am not kidding about that time, people. We got to take off at 3. Okay. Nice. Now there's like significant differences, but maybe I'll spend like 2 more seconds over here on this tree. Distant one. I like to paint all the way to the edges if I remember to, but I usually don't remember to. So then I go back around and I think to myself, wow, now I've got so many little colors to match up. Anyways, we all have these little habits and I'm trying to break them one by one. Here we have a very dark color and we're going to use, I don't know what brush, maybe the same. I'm going to look for a slightly different brush. What I want is like a nice sharp edged flat brush. Don't really have one. Oh, this pointy one will have to do. 100% not what I was going for, but it might really actually be just the thing. So let's try it. How optimistic I am. Very dark color. And it has like enough flow so that I don't have any trouble getting it to kind of come off the brush. I can make all sorts of little marks. So if you're feeling like my paint isn't doing that, it's not moving, it's not you, you can change the consistency. So you absolutely can and should. Here, this is a tricky part. Let me show you what I'm doing. I got to paint right over that sky. Whew. Nerve-wracking. Horrible. Okay. Luckily, it's a tree, so we're going to be okay. Wow. Okay. And now with a flick and a dot, maybe I can make that look a little less weird. Indeed, I can. Because once you put in other things, that one weird thing sometimes feels like it's just, it makes so much sense. Just the points of the brush, I can make like little marks. Oops. Now, the other thing too is like, have you ever struggled with making a thing from nature? It doesn't have to be a tree, but like normally we find this with painting trees. Have you ever struggled with like trying to make it feel random and not like you put a mark every exact distance, right? Like so patterned, so predictable. That happens very easily. Human beings just really crave that order and predictability. Now, as I'm putting my brush here, that allows me to create a mark that has almost no pressure on it. If you can kind of see that, how the brush is laying on the surface, I'm holding it, I'm like, it's hanging down like this. Mm-hmm. Change that color just a little bit. I see I have a dark green right nearby for a little variation. It's like you could barely see it. Probably on camera, it's a no, you can't, but I really like some of the edges in it. So wow, you have to be really careful how you put this stuff on because you don't want to go back into the sky for sure. Oh no. And I'm kind of like letting the brush almost randomize things a little bit. Like I'll kind of just have the brush in my hand and I'll let it fall at a certain point just to see if I can't get it to make a mark that I wouldn't have thought of. And I'm just going to go around and fill this shape until I feel like it's balancing. I want to see this trunk a little bit more. There we go. Coming back down the other way, a little wider. Alrighty. Now wrapping this up, as you know, I had to do 3 minutes ago. We're just gonna do a really quick and very dark green, green, green right in here. I mixed a little blue, yellow, and some purple from that shadow color because it is a very, it's kind of moody. Everything's in that like half light. But darkening that, isn't that making this just pop so much more? I believe it is. We need to connect. That's kind of growing out of this little hollow. See, I called it a hollow. Is it? I don't know. And what I'm doing is I'm really just like grabbing a ton of paint, scooping it to the side with my brush, laying that paint down, and then flicking and rolling the brush at the same time to get this kind of mark that just trails off. It could be layered, and we're just going to use that to indicate that something is growing out of this little depression in the ground. Well, this was a speedy painting. I would love nothing more than like another 10 minutes to touch this up and just kind of see, if I could push a few things. I think I would just go back. Oh, there's so many things I would do. But ending with your lightest lights and your darkest darks is usually a good sign that you've kind of created something according to a nice plan, right? You build out that value range a little at a time. So I think I would probably focus on the lights if I had a bit more time. But just as a little study, fill out this little grouping just a bit more. I'm going to dust this with a touch of yellow green so we can see it. All right, the end. Thank you guys so much for coming. I hope to see you next week. And if you have not already, please like, please subscribe. Really appreciate you being here. 1 second. Okay, hi. So yeah, I am definitely trying to get to 1K subscribers. So if you haven't already, hit that button because I would love to do my plein air this summer and take you along with me for that incredible fun journey. All right, so we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining.